we will just continue now. Okay, welcome back. And I would like to take the opportunity to just thank our sponsors again, because this would all be not possible without them. So Font Bureau, our titanium sponsor, diamond sponsor Adobe, and the platinum sponsor Founders Type, Monotype, and Morisawa. So before we come to the next speaker, I'd like to ask Wayne Thompson on the stage for a little message.
Good morning, everyone. I am the co-lead of ATypI's internationalisation working group. It's I had to practice that a few times before coming. There's so many syllables in that. We just call it the IWG. Thank you, David. Our mission within ATypI is to help expand the reach of ATypI into communities and regions that are underrepresented and not currently or historically well represented by ATypI. So my primary job is to look for and discuss with people the possibility of becoming an ATypI delegate. An ATypI delegate reports to ATypI in the form of a written report, an online report once a year about typographic activity in their region, community, the group that they choose to represent. So that typographic activity could be anything that relates to type, fonts, typography. It could be events such as this going on. It could be exhibitions. It could be typeface releases. It could be obituaries of people who've been significant in their community and have passed on, anything of that nature at all. And the purpose of it is to historically, like over a historical period of time, to create a historical record of typographic activity that forms a kind of an archive. And this is one of the core purposes of ATypI as an organisation. So I just wanted to get up and quickly mention that, because here at this conference there's something like 10 or 20 nationalities represented. You don't have to represent a specific place or geographical nationality. It could be a community. I represent, for instance, you might represent letterpress printers of the east coast of Australia, or something like that. I just wanted to say that if anybody is interested in becoming an ATypI delegate, it's a volunteer position. It's a position that takes maybe 3 or 4 hours of commitment in an annual period, so a bit of time to put a report together and attend a couple of Zoom meetings annually. I'd like you to come up and talk to me about that, and I will introduce you to the process of becoming a delegate. Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. And so we're up to our next speaker, who is Australian lettering artist Wes Franklin. Wes, please come on up.
Thank you, and g'day everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to share a bit of my lettering and mural journey with you. Before I get started, I've got a couple of questions, so I need a bit of audience participation. So the first question is, I'm just wondering, how many of you in this room grew up in a regional town? So somewhere away out of the big cities. Yeah, good portion of you. And one more question, how many of you currently live in a regional town? Yeah, far less. That's kind of what I expected. So I'm in that category. I live in regional Victoria. And the reason I bring up or ask those questions is my topic today is Walls That Speak, the role of typographic murals in a regional community context. So it's a bit of a mouthful. Hopefully I can, do it justice. But I'll be speaking very much from my own experiences, particularly over the last 5 or 6 years living in regional Victoria. And I'll be looking at the impact of the places that we live, the importance of community in those places, and the role of creativity in all that. Now, I'm aware that many of you here are not from Australia. as Wayne touched on. So you may not be familiar with the street art scene here in Australia. But over the last few days here in Brisbane, if you've been able to get out and explore a bit, you might have discovered some of the amazing murals that Brisbane has on offer. I grew up in Melbourne, and the city of Melbourne has long been known for its street art scene. That's where street art in Australia began, and it kind of spread out from there to all the major cities. Regional towns, on the other hand, have typically been resistant to street art for lots of different reasons. But we're starting to see that change more recently. We're seeing the silo art trails become super popular. That's where there's these enormous murals being painted on the side of grain silos, and they're very much out in regional and even in remote areas. We're seeing regional mural festivals pop up all over the place. Last month, I went across to the Benalla Street Art Festival, which is in regional Victoria. And the town of Benalla is a small town, maybe 14,000 people. But that mural festival has really built a name for itself, and it attracts a lot of people and some big name artists. And so if you're ever down that way, it's worth dropping in. These are some of my favourite murals that you can find in regional Victoria, and the captions there will tell you who they're by and where they are. All this to say that murals clearly have something going for them. Now, let's talk typography, because obviously that's why we're all here, and specifically typography in regional areas. Typography has a long and beautiful history in regional towns. It's actually one of my favourite things about living in regional Victoria is getting out and exploring these little gold rush towns and seeing all these beautiful hand-painted signs. And I know, the big cities have it too, but it's more obvious in regional areas. And that's So typography certainly is at home in regional areas. What about typographic murals? So these are the kinds of murals that I create, and I feel like they're the perfect blend of the old and the new. So the old craft of hand lettering combined with the equally old or even older trade and tradition of painting letters on walls, but brought into the modern day with a mix of fresh ideas and a contemporary context. And over the last 5 or 6 years, I've had the privilege of painting a handful of these murals in Bendigo and surrounding areas. And so for the rest of my talk, I'm going to tell you 3 stories about 3 of these murals that will kind of explore how I got to be where I am, how I ended up painting murals, and what a life-changing journey it's been. Before I tell you those stories, just a little side note about me, because I'm aware that most of you have no idea who I am, which is fine. This is a little snapshot of some of my non-mural work. I'm a graphic designer and lettering artist, and I've left out the freelance word because Dominique would be mad at me. My work has a fair bit of variety in it, but obviously lettering is the common thread. So some days I'll be out painting a mural, or like I was on Wednesday before I came up here, I was at a school teaching a mural workshop with some of the students, so I teach workshops. Other days I'll be at home at my little studio working on a logo type or creating some custom lettering for a brand. Don't get me wrong, there's definitely days when there's not much work and sometimes weeks, and it's tough to support my family. But on the whole, I really love what I do, and I feel very blessed to be able to do it and make a living from it. But my life hasn't always, and my work haven't always been so lettering focused. 20 years ago, I studied graphic design at RMIT in Melbourne, and from there worked in some pretty typical design jobs. But the life-changing moment for me came about 10 years ago. I had just quit my full-time design job to start a little business with a web developer friend of mine. And for the first time in my life, I had a bit of time and space, or the first time in my working life, a bit of time and space. I was working from home, which wasn't so common back then, and I stumbled upon, somehow, lettering artists. Some of the big names like Jessica Hirsch, John Contino, later on, Matt Vagotis and co. And their work just blew my mind. And I just wondered, like, how had I not known about this sooner? I'm sure I had seen hand lettering, but I didn't realise it was a skill and a trade, a tradition, a thing that you could pursue and learn and become good at and incorporate in your work. So fast forward 6 months from that point, and I was in pretty deep. Some of you can probably relate. I was buying all the pens. I was practicing, multiple times a week, sometimes every day. My work was not very good. That's some early attempts at hand lettering. But I'd also discovered online communities like Typism. Now, fast forward another few years, and my family and I, so my wife Heidi and I we had 2 boys at the time. We've got 3 boys now. We had decided to relocate from Melbourne up to Darwin. And that's kind of a story for another day. But our 4 years in Darwin were incredible. It was an incredible time. It was life-changing. But when it came to lettering, it was very isolating. So I would come to the Gold Coast each year for my typism fix. And that's kind of where I started to meet in person and online a lot of the people who are here who are involved in the lettering community. Speaking of typism, I know many of you were at the Typism Poster show the other night, and I'm privileged enough to have a piece in that show. And over the last 6 years, I've had various lettering pieces published in the Typism books. And typism has played a big part in my lettering journey. And I just want to shout out to Dominique, just to say thanks so much for what you and your team do and have done with typism. Lettering can be a really lonely journey sometimes, but being part of the typism community has made a huge difference for me. Yeah. Now, somewhere along the journey, I noticed lettering artists painting their letters large scale on walls, and I reckon it was actually probably Matt Vagotis and some of his early work and others. And that got me curious about murals. I'd never done anything like that. Around the same time, my family and I made the tough decision to leave Darwin and relocate back down to the dreaded south to a place called Bendigo. Everything in me wanted to stay in Darwin, but Bendigo would prove to be the right place at the right time. And that leads me to my first mural story. So for those of you maybe not so familiar with Australia, there's a map for you. Right up the top of the blue line there is Darwin. It's a beautiful, remote, tropical city. The photo at the top left, that's a typical Darwin sunset. It has this beautiful rugged coastline. There's amazing fishing there. There's national parks with incredible waterfalls and waterholes. It's a great place. Definitely recommend visiting, if not moving there. Follow that blue line 3,600 kilometres south and you hit Bendigo. And just for reference, that magenta circle there is Brisbane, where we are. Now, Bendigo is pretty much the opposite to Darwin in every way, except for its size. So you can see the photo at the bottom right there. It is a very pretty city. It's a gold rush town. There's lots of really old buildings. In springtime, the tulips come out. It's very cold for a lot of the year, which I struggle with. And it's definitely not a tropical fishing paradise, which I really miss. But what I didn't know or expect when we moved to Bendigo is that it's actually home to a thriving community of artists and creatives. And the city itself actually has a strategy that considers every aspect of creativity in the community, recognising its importance to health, well-being and community development. And we just happened to land in this place, in this environment, right around the time when I was exploring murals and I was exploring taking my lettering hobby and turning it into something more. After the initial move to Bendigo, something significant that happened was that we got involved with a thriving community, neighbourhood community hub called the Old Church on the Hill. And being part of that community and being welcomed into that community played a huge part in us feeling at home and welcome in a new and unfamiliar town. And that sense of belonging then sort of helped me it gave me the confidence to express my creativity in public, and that led to this mural. So this is painted in what's known as the feast space. So it's an old hall where community meals and morning teas and things are shared. And I had the privilege of contributing this mural to the community and to the space. We spent a lot of time coming up with the wording because that was really important, and we landed with there's a place at the table for you, and everyone kind of agreed that really captured the essence of what the Old Church on the Hill is all about, and it's actually become like the unofficial mission statement of the Old Church. Now, there's lots of things that I would change about this mural now if I was doing it now, but it's significant to me because it really got me started with murals. Now, the second story, that's just a shot of one of those community meals being shared. The second story happened a few years ago in the middle of COVID. I know it's a time none of us wants to go back and visit that time, but I felt like it was a good story. So during one of our many lockdowns in Victoria, I'm not sure if Brisbane really had lockdowns, but in Victoria we had many. And so we were allowed to leave the house for 2 hours a day for exercise. So I was out walking our dog at the reserve near our house, and I noticed, possibly for the first time, this very boring-looking rebound wall. You can see it's sort of next to a tennis court there, and the purpose is to give kids something to practice hitting a ball against. I've never actually seen anyone use it. I had been on the lookout for a way to contribute my creativity in our neighbourhood. It was obviously it was a really tough time, and I wanted to somehow bring some colour, some positivity, some hope to the place that I lived. And this wall was just begging to be painted. Now, I probably could have just gone and painted it and no one would have cared, but I drew up a concept to present to the council, to the city of Greater Bendigo. I wanted it to be an interactive mural, or an interactive wall. So because we were so isolated at the time, I wanted people to be able to interact with it and sort of have some sort of connection that way. So that's where the chalkboard idea came from. Now, the council loved the idea, thankfully, and they actually offered to pay me, which I was not expecting. And I was able to get free paint from the local Hames paint shop, who are legends and often support community projects. So with the help of some friends who helped me paint it, the support of the council and the paint shop, it all just came together beautifully, and this is what we created. It's a gratitude wall. Now, I had no idea if anyone would use it, if they would interact with it, but a couple of days after finishing, I went and had a look, and the chalkboard section was full. It was full of things that people were grateful for. And at the end of that week, I went and washed the wall, and a couple of days later, it was full again. And so it went for, how long do you think I lasted? 6 weeks, until I got sick of cleaning the wall. But yeah, I'm really proud of this project. It was born out of a pretty tough time, and it was a personal response. And I think it's a great example of the power of positive messages in public spaces. The last story I want to share happened last year. One of the local swimming pools in Bendigo approached me. They were under threat of being closed, and they needed some help to rejuvenate the space. They needed help with wayfinding, they wanted to rejuvenate the space through placemaking. I had never actually been to the pool, and when I went the first time, this is kind of what I saw from the car park. Lots of bleak beige walls, and it was quite kind of confusing where the entrance was. There was this hall next to it that was painted in the same colour, and it wasn't sure if it was related to the pool or not. Anyways, it was, you know, it was a dull, neglected space, and I was more than happy to help. Because wayfinding was one of the main components, the inclusion of typography needed to lean more towards functional than creative. And so to balance that out, I included some fun kind of pool-inspired illustrations in there. You can see a few orcas in there because that's the swimming club mascot. So you can sort of see how it turned out. There was also a third wall involved in this project, which I think I'll sort of skip to save time, but I'll just mention that this is a third wall, and I collaborated with my friend Alicia on that one. So this was the biggest project I'd taken on myself, and it was actually a lot of fun, but it wasn't without its challenges. You can see the photo on the left there. Some of those, so we started in winter, which was the first mistake, and it was kind of out of my hands. Like, I definitely wouldn't have if I had a choice. You can see the photo there, the steam coming off the pool. It was very cold on some of those mornings, and I can tell you, if one of those walls was southward facing, it never saw the sun, and painting a cold wall in the shade in winter is not fun. And the paint never dries. So I spent a fair bit of time drying paint with a heat gun on that wall. But look, we managed to, you can see it before and after there, we managed to solve the wayfinding issue. We created a visual identity for the pool, which tied in with, they had a website built at the same time, it ties in with that. And it just brings a sense of pride and ownership to visitors and members of the pool. One aspect of this project I just want to quickly point out is collaboration. I mentioned that wall that I collaborated with Alicia. I could have just taken this project on myself, but I've been doing this for a little while now, and I am aware of the value of collaboration. So I got a few other people involved. Alicia was one, my friend Jed was another, and that just brought a whole different aspect and energy to the project that wouldn't have existed otherwise. And it's one thing I've learned over the last 5 or 6 years painting murals is when you're a sole trader, collaboration can be huge. And through collaboration, a stronger sense of community is built. Of course, community is not only found in regional towns. You might experience community in your inner city apartment block, or in the places you work or study, or in a school or a sports club. Or, as I mentioned earlier, in online communities like Typism. The important thing is that we're active in our communities, contributing to them and benefiting from them. And so I just want to wrap up with that challenge. Wherever you live, whether it's a big city or a regional town or wherever, I just want to encourage you to be using your creativity to contribute to the strength and richness of your communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Wes. And we are slightly behind, but we'll just allow 1 or 2 questions.
Can I also just say, I didn't include my contact details up there, but please find me on Instagram, just Wes Franklin, and I'd love to connect that way.
Hi there. Just first of all, thanks for the refreshing honesty about the ebbs and flows of working in the industry. I think we can all appreciate that. I saw you with a brush in a couple of the photos. Are you left-handed, and how have you found that painting?
Yes, I am left-handed, and that's probably why I initially followed Matt Regattis a lot, because he also is. And I know there's a lot of left-handed letterers out there, and Tanya as well. Yes, I'm left-handed. I probably found it challenging to begin with. I think when you're standing, working on a vertical surface, it's not such a big deal, especially if you've got a brush that is firm enough that you can put a bit of pressure on the wall and you don't have to be leaning on the wall. Certainly, from a sign painting point of view, it is a challenge, and I've learned. Well, I've done a few workshops with left-handed sign painters just to try and figure out some of that. But yeah, left-handers are are awesome, and we work it out.
Go the lefties, like
Yeah.
myself. Any more questions?
Hi. From a marketing point of view, have your you're going into public spaces and you're going into spaces that are completely, in many cases, bland, unappealing. Once you've put your work up, have they seen I'm assuming they see a bump in business visibility. Have you been tracking that?
I haven't been tracking it, but I've certainly received feedback like that. It's certainly from a placemaking point of view that it helps people just have that sort of ownership of the space and feel connected to it. It's not just a wall. It's now something that you feel something. So there's definitely positive feedback in that way. But yeah, it'd be interesting to track that more. Yeah.
Okay. Any more questions? No?